What's up, y'all? It's your girl CJ. Welcome back to another video. This is Storytime Sunday. However, I know it's Monday. I'm sorry. I did it again. I'm giving it to you now. I know I'm 24 hours late, but hey, come on now. You can't be mad at this face for too long.
One of the worst cases of mass murder in Iowa history.
I'd never seen that many police in all my life.
How do you know these people? It's my boyfriend's sister and her children.
We all thought, why were they killed? Why would they be targeted?
It was like he was possessed.
At this point in time, obviously there's no suspects, and we're not going to name any suspects.
A lot of people aren't going to go to school, that aren't going to go to work in the morning.
And my heart to this day will never stop breaking for them.
Iowa.
This is Nikki. It was kind of the Madonna phase. First time I ever had a friend in the neighborhood was when Nikki and her family, the Forsyths, moved in. That was her house right back there. And you can see the Suburban in the driveway. I can remember seeing the trucks up there and going, ooh, you know, who's gonna move into the new house up the road? And this was on the night of homecoming dance, so that's why we're all dressed up and fancy. We didn't have a date, but we were just each other's date that day. Back then you used hairspray and you ratted your bangs up, and so we'd always take turns doing each other's hair, and we did so much together. Like, we tried out for a cheerleading tryout one time together, which we miserably failed at. This one is just inside the Forsyth home, and that is the mom, Jolene. She just had a smile for days. Rick and Jolene Forsyth had 4 children, and that's Brian, the oldest son. He had a heart of gold, and he was always willing to help with anything and everything, and very protective of all of his siblings. Jessica was the sweetest little girl ever. She always was laughing and running and playing. And then the smallest, which tragically he lost his life early, was Eric. Eric was this fun, loving kid that just loved everyone.
Norwalk is a smaller town and about 10 or 15 minutes southwest of Des Moines. A very quiet place, a very safe place.
Des Moines. I feel like there's so much, like every time you hear about like a small town in Iowa, I always hear the place Des Moines. Like, what is going out in Des Moines? They're creating serial killers. The devil lives there, clearly.
Ball games and stuff like that. The rival team would call Norwalk Snorwalk. Nothing happening, nothing in the town. Not even one fast food restaurant back then.
Adventureland is Iowa's local amusement park.
And I spent the entire day there riding all the roller coasters and eating all the corn dogs. My dad was supposed to pick me up, but he didn't. He sent my friend Angela's parents to get us. They always played the police scanner in the car. On the way home, I thought it was strange because they refused to turn it on that day. And as soon as we round the corner to go on Knoll Drive, the entire street was blocked off with yellow tape, police everywhere, and that's when they told me I needed to go talk to my dad. They still wouldn't tell me what was going on.
I remember there were a lot of people standing around outside, gawking and wondering what was going on. We found from neighbors that that was the house owned by the Forsyth family.
The first 911 call came into the Warren County dispatcher around 1 o'clock from a young friend of the Forsyth family.
We went over to my aunt's house because nobody answered the phone, and they're in a big panic over there. They wanted to call the police.
I had a bad feeling that it had something to do with Nikki, but I was hoping not.
Seconds later, another older boy got on the phone with details of the emergency.
Now, for all I know, about 4 people dead.
The Warren County dispatcher then asked if an adult was nearby. The second caller quickly went to get his mother.
There's been a mass murder at 1009 Aspen. Are you sure? Yes.
Everybody in the neighborhood knew who they were. And then after a little while, they saw the stretchers coming out of the front door. Something really awful just happened.
The victims are identified as 39-year-old Mary Jolene Forsyth, the homeowner, and her 3 children. 18-year-old Brian, 17-year-old Nikki, and 9-year-old Jessica.
And my dad had told me what had happened, that Nikki was gone and everybody in the house had been killed.
Police also found 2 other bodies identified as 9-year-old Martina.
Before we continue, I just got my DoorDash delivery, and I just want to like ask if the DoorDash person gives you your beverage and it's like this. This is my own straw. He didn't give me a straw, but it's open. Normally when DoorDash people give you something, they always have like the stickers over the tops, and he was very like strange. I told him have a good day, and he goes, sure. I don't know. I just have a bad feeling. Should I risk it for the biscuit because I need my coffee? You think he roofied it? I mean, it tastes okay. All right, let's go back a little bit.
And everybody in the house had been killed.
Police also found 2 other bodies identified as 9-year-old Martina Napadano and 7-year-old Helen Napadano.
When I found out it was more than just the immediate family, first of all, the immediate family in general was heartbreaking. But those 2 little kids, my heart to this day will never stop breaking for them.
Who were they?
We also might need ambulance, stuff like that. They're one person still alive.
And we knew that somebody was taken to the hospital, but at the time I didn't know who.
Police also found 42-year-old Rick Forsyth, the father of 3 of the victims. He had a gunshot wound to the head and was transported to a Des Moines hospital.
I think everyone who was at the scene at the time thought, well, if he's shot in the head, then he's going to die too.
Right.
Police found a revolver on the scene as well and believe it could have been used in the killing.
Especially at Iowa at this time, there was a level of trust that the police and the authorities would find the right person and make sure that they pay for the crime that they did.
No teenager should have to go to a quadruple funeral, especially in a small town where nothing happens. You never think anything's going to be wrong, and so to process that, I don't think I still to this day have even processed that.
You notice every time we watch one of these stories, they always say it's in a town where nothing happens. People always think that they're like invincible until it does happen to them. That's why I stay so humble, super humble, because in a second, things can change. In a second, things can be taken from you. It's scary. We live in a really scary world, especially nowadays. Everything's a risk. Everything is a risk. That's why I don't fault people for being creatures of habits. They do the same thing, the same routine. I personally can't live like that. I'm very impulsive mindset, very driven, but it is a gamble. I live life on edge, and it is a gamble.
Well, I don't think any of us thought that Rick was going to live. At least not in the newsroom. We didn't.
He was fighting for his life in the hospital.
One friend of Rick Forsyth says he loved his family dearly.
Family was so important to him.
Okay, so now we're getting his background.
The day Eric died was a hot, sunny day, and we were all just doing the same thing we always did, getting on our bikes, rolling down the hill, and we were all happy and playing and just having the best day ever. Their cousin was on their skateboard and Eric was on his bicycle, and partway down the hill they collided. We literally watched him fall backwards off the bike and smack his head on the ground. And we could see the pool of blood on the back of his head. I can remember watching Rick, and he was a tall, skinny man, came running down the hill to him. He's crying over him, and it was traumatic. It really was. And they took him to the hospital, and he didn't make it from there. The head injury was just too bad. So I can remember us taking the casket into the cemetery and burying Eric there. The day they did bury Eric, they buried Rick as well, because he was never himself after that.
Yeah. Wow. Wait, Rick. Did the dad do it? Hold on.
I was expecting him to die in the hospital. I honestly thought when they said that he'd been shot in the head that he wasn't going to live. I mean, most people wouldn't being shot in the head.
I don't know how long it was after that, but it sounded like he was going to make it.
Investigators interviewed Rick Forsyth in his hospital room as he recovered from a gunshot wound to his head.
We have found your wife, Jolene, and your children all in your home, and they are all dead. Can you tell us how that happened? They're what? They're all dead. They're all dead?
Forsyth has a .22 caliber bullet lodged in his brain. The doctors say a memory loss is consistent with that type of injury.
He claimed he didn't remember anything. He didn't know anything. I don't believe him to this day.
He did it. Wow. This is getting interesting.
Police also found 42-year-old Rick Forsyth, the father of 3 of the victims. He had a gunshot wound to the head and was transported to a Des Moines hospital. Forsyth is still alive. Police will not speculate on whether the father, Rick Forsyth, was involved in a murder-suicide.
Everyone who I talked to wasn't necessarily worried about a killer on the loose, but were thinking that Rick had shot and killed his family. Most of the neighbors knew that he wasn't living in the house anymore, and that the fact that he was in the house when the shooting happened, I think most of the neighbors would have thought that he might have had something to do with it.
Right.
My dad tried not to talk about it too much in front of me or in the house, so I didn't have to think about it. You know, he rarely would turn on the news in the evening because we'd already were hearing about it in the neighborhood nonstop.
What has this done to your neighborhood? It's obviously been a very tough time.
Oh, yes. Tension between neighbors is very high.
Rick Forsyth's trial began on March 21st, 1994.
You got somebody who can take audio and video check from me, please?
Rick looked like he had been through quite an ordeal, and he looked kind of frail.
Prosecutors tried to carefully and meticulously show how Rick Forsyth used that murder weapon to kill his 6 victims. Rick Forsyth will not take the witness stand. Of course, if you're a jury member, you probably want to hear what his version of events is. But the defense says he has no version to tell.
I can imagine if there's a lot of trauma to someone's brain, that there would be gaps in memory.
Rick, did you shoot your family members? No? Did you shoot yourself? No.
They called 3 doctors who tested him. The doctors say they don't think Forsyth remembers, and they don't think he's faking it.
Then the defense called its first 2 witnesses. One of them, a gun expert, who said it's difficult to do what prosecutors claim Forsyth did. And the defense says there's no proof Forsyth ever touched the murder weapon.
I know this was like back in the 90s, but obviously technology has advanced since then. But even in the 90s, couldn't you tell if, like when people commit suicide, they have like bullet residue on their wrist or something? So I feel like, man, they should have checked his arms then, because if he wanted to, he did homicide and killed his whole family plus those 2 little kids as well. And then if he tried to end his own life after killing them, I feel like you would be able to see that, right?
Bruh.
Just saying, maybe I'm foreshadowing, or maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. 1 second now, we'll find out.
Moved bodies after Forsyth had been shot, and someone with a bullet wound to his head couldn't do it.
That's him? Oh no. Oh, Lord forgive me, I think that's an attorney. Okay. Caitlin.
Some people are wanting to hear from him, his own words, because I think everyone just was trying to make sense of it.
Psychologist William McMorty says Forsyth told him his life unraveled after his son Eric accidentally died a few years earlier.
That everything in his life had changed. His wife had told him the day that they buried his son Eric, the wife reported that they buried you with him. He indicated that that destroyed our marriage.
The loss just changed him completely.
Rick was always a little bit off, but after that, he was just not right at all.
Prosecutor Harold Young says Rick
Trust your
Forsythe's
gut.
obsessive
She knows.
behavior took control of him, and Rick's marriage with his wife Jolene fell apart.
Jolene finally asked him to move and to leave. And she got the courage to start divorce proceedings with them.
He lost his mind.
He got worse after that.
Yeah.
He'd sit outside her house in his car all night long. And she was terrified of him. She'd called the police on him, but there wasn't much that they could do. Jolene sought a no-contact order because he wouldn't leave her alone. Everywhere she went, he was there. He was sitting in front of my...
As viewers, you know he did it. Like, just all the evidence and all the intense building is going to this man. But we still got 10 minutes. Maybe there's a twist to this story.
He terrorized the neighborhood.
Jolene told me she'd gotten a gun because they were that afraid of him, what he might do to the kids or whoever might be there.
The kids too?
Defense attorney Kathleen Selzer says there's evidence in...
It's one thing to, like, separate from your significant other and get a divorce, but I feel like co-parenting is strong. They just said that Jolene got a gun because she was scared of what he might do to her and the kids. So they were, he was dangerous. He was definitely dangerous.
Jolene Forsythe's diary that Rick Forsythe was welcome at the home at times, and it shouldn't seem unusual that Forsythe was at Jolene's house.
They don't want you to look at the big picture.
The defense theory, someone set Forsythe up. The defense says it might have been Jolene's boyfriend, Mark Napadano. Napadano is the father of victims Martina and Helen.
When Jolene came home after she'd went on a date with Mark, she was just head over heels. It was almost like she fell in love, and I'd never seen such a sparkle in her eyes. She said she'd never know that you could feel that way with someone.
At the Rick Forsythe murder trial, one witness says the killer is not Rick Forsythe.
This woman says she thinks her ex-husband is the killer.
He said, we're not going to all live through this.
What? What? Whoa, see? Here's the twist. Here is the twist. It wasn't Rick. It was somebody else.
By the summer of 1994, Rick was on trial for the murder of his family, plus 2 non-family members as well.
This woman says she thinks her ex-husband is the killer. Paige Brady is Helen and Martina Napadano's mother and divorced from Mark Napadano. She says Napadano confessed to her on the telephone.
He said, we're not going to all live through this. I just want to be dead and be buried together as a family.
As far as that goes for Mark, that's tragic. I mean, his life is already tragic enough, and then you go blame him?
We should point out that Mark Napadano testified earlier on in the case. He testified for the prosecution. For the record, the prosecutors asked him this point blank. He says he did not kill his children. Kevin?
Rick's attorney was public defender, but also a very well-known public defender. And
I was gonna say, we did a video and he was an attorney or public defender for somebody else. I forget who. But I think it was another Iowa case.
Well respected in Des Moines.
Defense attorney John Wellman says it's not his job to prove who really did it.
The defense attorney's entire job is to create doubts in the mind of the jury that, well, maybe he didn't do it. Maybe somebody else did it.
Without naming names, Forsythe hints it was his brother-in-law, Kevin Reinhardt. Jolene Forsythe's brother found the bodies on June 14th in Norwalk.
The defense attorney was trying to blame Kevin for this, because he's the one that found him.
Reinhardt told conflicting stories about what happened then. During the trial, the defense tried to link him to the slayings. On the witness stand, Reinhardt firmly denied it.
Did you cause any harm to Jolene Forsythe on that day or previously?
No. Reinhardt later called it all a defense ploy.
Defense attorney John Wellman skillfully cultivates reasonable doubt in this whodunit.
The legal standard is beyond a reasonable doubt, what a reasonable person would consider doubts.
It's very deep, I think. Very, very deep. You really don't know what to believe at this moment.
The pictures show daughter Jessica Forsythe's head on a pool of dried blood that's apparently Rick Forsythe's.
So that means she was put on that pillow after the blood had dried, doesn't it?
After the blood had been deposited there, yes, sir. Very confusing to me is about all I got to say.
If I commit suicide like that?
At this point, I'm really not as sure as I was originally. I don't know what I would decide if I was on the jury.
I cannot factually state what took place. I'm only giving you facts of my blood grouping results here, and I have to let the jury decide what those results mean.
People said that he was a stalker. I think if somebody loves their family enough, they have to see them. And this is what Rick told me, that he had to see his family.
They didn't know him. They weren't living this firsthand.
The person that killed those people over there was not Rick Forsyth. Rick wouldn't do something like that.
I was living it.
You never know what somebody can and can't do. Like, if you're not living with them and up under them for years and years and years and years and years and experience what goes on behind closed doors, just because you're friends with someone, you have no idea. The person I claim that is my best friend, we work together, we live in the same complex together, but sometimes she does shit that she tells me about that still surprises me. So it's like, you never really know somebody unless you're living with them, honestly.
I was seeing it every day. I knew.
She was up in that house.
You could feel the crazy radiating off of him. My biggest fear was that he was gonna get off or get away with it and be out in the world. What if he comes after me? What if, because I was such a big part of the family, he didn't get all the job done?
One of several developments today in the Rick Forsyth trial.
A prosecution witness testified today that Rick Forsyth wrote 2 suicide notes.
Wow.
I love my kids, Brian, Nikki, Jessica, Eric, and my wife, Jolene, all of them. We will all be together the way it is supposed to be, forever. Love, your daddy. Now we will all be together. Thank you, God, for all of your love, free at last. God, forgive me, please.
He couldn't see his kids. He wanted his family back. He wrote a note saying, we're all going to be together again. Thank you, God. He did it. He did it.
Please, for the 2 little girls, I am sorry.
I think in his...
I still am so confused. What was the 2 little girls about? Were they hanging out with one of the friend? Like, were they friends to the kids of this man? I'm confused. Like, the family thing, but why would you, take 2 more innocent lives who have nothing to do with nothing?
What? Weirdly crazy delusional brain, and they'd all just be together as one big happy family in heaven.
At this point, no more testimony and no more witnesses.
Be careful
Attorneys
who
are
you
making
have
their
kids
final
with.
pitch as to why the jury should convict Rick Forsyth or they should acquit Rick Forsyth of the 6 counts of first-degree murder. The jury has the option of 3 verdicts in this case. They can find Forsyth guilty of first-degree murder, they can find him guilty of second-degree murder, meaning he didn't intend to kill his victims, or they can find him not guilty.
Oh, what was gonna happen? You just...
I won't do that again. I don't know why I did that. Something in my brain just told me to do that.
Hoping and praying that they would convict him.
The fate of accused mass murderer Rick Forsyth is now in the hands of a Lynn County jury.
When word came of a decision, those who have lived this case since last June began to gather. Defense attorney Kathleen Selsler and Margaret Reinhardt, the mother of Jolene Forsyth.
There's a lot of anticipation, a lot of wonder, a lot of hope that the person gets the verdict that they're wishing for, that they've been praying for. There's trepidation because the victim's family is like, what if they're found not guilty? Or what if they're found guilty of something less and they're not going to be in jail the rest of their lives? What if?
Around the community, residents gathered around their television sets to hear the verdict announced live.
I do remember sitting in our living room. My dad had turned on the news, the TV, so that we could watch.
Members of the jury, have you reached a verdict?
We, the jury, find the defendant, Rick Wayne Forsyth, guilty of murder in the first degree.
Yes!
And I just remember it was a sigh of relief that day. It's almost like, you know, your heart was racing the whole time while you're waiting for this jury to deliberate.
I find it appropriate that the defendant be sentenced to a term of life incarceration.
Then it comes out and it's almost just like huge weight was lifted off your shoulders. It's like he's never going to be free.
Amanda Violet and Ann Jones, friends of Nikki Forsythe, hugged each other in happiness and relief once they knew a jury had found Rick Forsythe guilty of murder.
It makes me sad just thinking that I'll never see her again, but then again it makes me happy knowing that he's put away forever.
There wasn't joy at this verdict because this family's gone. They can hopefully move on.
I'm very glad it's over.
I always knew in my mind who it was, but just getting it across to the jury was the problem.
Look at the reaction from the rest of the Reinhardt family as they drove away from the court, obviously happy with the decision of the jury.
No one had more to say than Kevin Reinhardt, fingered as a suspect in the killings by defense attorneys.
When you walk into something like that and have to deal with what you see, what happened, and you lost your loved ones, and then on top of that, be a suspect from the defense, it's just a tragedy.
I mean, that would burn in your brain for life,
Right.
having to see that. And it must have been horrifying.
I can't imagine how that affects you.
I'm still traumatized just from the situation in general.
Oh boy. I mean,
I've spent so much of my life kind of in hiding, and I've spent a lot of my life scared. It makes me sad that I was never gonna see her again, but then I'm at that stage in my life where I cherish what memories I do have about Nikki.
it's crazy because, okay, yeah, he shot himself in the head, clearly survived, and that wasn't the goal. The goal was for him to die with his family that he took. Like, we know he did it, okay? Whether he maintains his innocence, he could be faking his fucking, his brain injury and like just know he did it, but just wants to play the part of being like, oh, I don't remember shit. Or he just really doesn't remember. But that note, them finding that note was key, bro. That was literally... The devil kept him alive. God kept him alive. He did a fucking terrible, terrible thing to his family. Okay? The universe, whatever you believe in, kept that man who did those terrible things alive so he could spend the rest of his fucking life in prison. And remember that. That's just how I feel. He has to live through that every fucking day. That's his purgatory. That's his purgatory. He's still alive and he has to suffer. It's a lesson in life, you know? You're either a lesson or a blessing. That's just how I feel. But anyways, yo, thank you for everything. Please like, comment, subscribe, share, tell your friends to tell their friends to tell those friends that CJ started gaming and she does reactions to hometown tragedies by yours truly, Very Local. Thank you, Very Local. I absolutely love your videos and your documentaries. Short, sweet, to the point. I will keep reacting to them. Thank you. All right, bye, y'all. Mwah.